Welcome to ASEAN BIZ, your only choice for business updates covering ASEAN countries. I'm Andrew Chia.
And I'm Eric Chong.
And we bring you business news on everything that happens around the world that involves ASEAN countries.
Yes, our direct main story today is Property Trends in Malaysia 2016. But before that, let's look at our current business updates on the topic of oil prices in May 2016.
Yes, Eric.
Okay.
Recently, oil prices have started to move up from $40.
And it looks like some good news for the oil-producing countries, or rather not so good news for the consumer.
Right, let's take a look at prices a couple of months ago. In March 2016, oil prices internationally was $40 a barrel crude oil.
Yes, and a certain period it actually drops below $40.
Right, yeah.
But it doesn't stay there for too long, and the prices start to inches its way up during April. Then at the end of April, it closes at $46 per barrel.
Right. So we were all afraid over here in Malaysia that the increase in oil prices would lead to an increase in petrol prices. But fortunately or unfortunately, there's an election around the corner, and the government have decided to put on hold any increases in petrol prices.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to speculate what happens after the elections.
Right.
And who is the winning party.
We only know.
Yeah,
yes.
for these past 2 months, we have been enjoying quite a substantial savings in our petrol cost.
Right, yes.
So it actually drops up to 170 Malaysia ringgit to a liter. So which we haven't seen that for the past almost 10 years.
Right, yeah. And in May, in the beginning of the month, it opened lower. And Eric, let's hope it keeps going lower.
Going lower.
Hey, that's not good for our country, yeah.
We wouldn't know, but I
it's
think
good for us.
It's good for the consumer.
So we are still getting cheap petrol prices.
This will give the oil-producing companies or oil-producing countries to look into other alternative of energy.
Right.
But sad to say, it's been close to 200 years that the whole economy circles around oil prices.
Right. Everybody is addicted to oil, right?
And without oil, it's just like the world will stand still. But actually nowadays, with technology so vast improvements, there's actually a lot of alternative energy.
Yeah, Eric,
oil.
I can dream of the day where cars are using water, powered by water instead.
Yeah, and
is that a fairy tale, or is it possible?
It might happen. A lot of companies are actually testing out this kind of so-called fuel cell, but we yet to see that in Malaysia. But so far, we have seen the increase in using electricity.
Yeah, battery-powered or electricity-powered cars are making a great comeback.
Yes. So, and then on top of that, the shale oil players have not come back into the market after low prices in the beginning of 2016.
Yes, earlier shale oil were really putting the oil prices down with their cheaper costs and stuff like that, right?
Yes, and in fact, for our current listeners who wouldn't know what is shale oil is all about, I believe that I remember in the past few episodes we actually talked about shale oil.
Right.
So just a reminder, shale oil is actually other kind of oil which are found in the earth. They actually have to harvest from the earth to clean it up.
Yeah, I think it's a process for harvesting the oil from the earth.
Oil from the earth. So it's not actually dug up deep inside the earth where they suck it out.
Yeah,
so
something like pour hot water to force the oil out.
The cost of producing shale oil is actually much higher than the normal drilling oils.
But with the shale oil, the production increased and we have cheaper oil, right?
So we yet to see. Okay, let's keep our finger crossed. And on top of that, oil prices expected to stay low in May 2016. But market is quite volatile, with pundits betting on both ends of the charts.
Some people are saying it's going to go lower because the OPEC players and the Middle East, they keep pushing up production.
Yeah.
But then again, some people think that it's going to go up.
So maybe Andrew can just enlighten our listeners what you mean by betting on both ends of the
Yeah, some people
charts.
are saying that oil prices will keep going down. Like I said, the Middle East conflict with Iran and Arab trying to push up production higher and higher, and more production means cheaper oil, right?
Yes. And
On the other hand, people are saying that oil prices have been very low. It used to be $100, now it's in the 40s. So there's only one way to go. That's up.
So that's
So
that's
there are two
what
arguments.
that's what the speculators, or rather the so-called investor, are putting their bets on. That's what they call by both ends of the charts. They go on shorts and they go on low. So whichever comes first, right?
Yeah. So
So
we
that-
have yet to see. Let's see what happens in May this year.
Yeah, and if the chart keep on as a so-called trending chart, we are moving up and down. So I think this kind of pundits will actually hurts them badly.
Yeah. And
No.
as Malaysians, Eric, let's hope that whether oil price goes up or down, we stand to benefit. Because if it's down, we'll have cheaper petrol. But if it goes up, our country becomes richer, right?
Yes,
And
in a way.
hopefully we also become richer in the process.
In a way, when the country is richer, then we will be expecting a better infrastructure facilities.
Yes, and currency also will
Currency will
improve.
become much more stronger, and in a way, it actually benefits the country. But let's hope that most country will not be so dependent on oil itself. There are other things to depends on rather than just oil.
Yeah, other alternative sources of energy like wind, solar energy, or
And
battery
recently they come up
electricity.
with a so-called ocean wave. How to
Wow,
harvest the
powerful.
ocean wave, which give them endless power.
Mm.
So let's hope that this kind of technology is mature enough to be implemented throughout the world, and
I
we
hope
can actually
they
see
can-
more green energies.
Yeah, I watched too much Iron Man, Eric. Let's have a nuclear energy source that will solve all our problems.
So there is a nuclear cell rather than a
Yeah.
nuclear plant. Okay, so it's two
There's a
different things. So
Million
each
times
car will
powerful
be
than oil.
powered by nuclear cell. Wow,
Mhm.
let's hope that it happens, and it will not cause any detrimental factors to the environment.
Great, Eric. Yes, we'll be back shortly with more interesting updates on ASEAN BIZ. Stay tuned, guys. Welcome back, folks. Before we bring on our main story for this edition, Eric is going to share with us his funny business moment. And the title of his story today is Before Google.
Oh, okay. Let's imagine we go back times before Google. Andrew, do you recall when
Yeah,
Google
it was
comes
not a
about?
long time ago, right? Google.
If I
It's
can
like-
recall, I think Google started in 1996 or 97.
Probably slightly after that, in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
So
I remember I opened my Hotmail account in 1999.
yeah,
At
me
that time,
too.
Google was still not around yet.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So before Google, there were librarians. Okay. If our younger folks still remember what are librarians for, here are some of the queries posed to the staff of public libraries. A woman wanted inspirational material on grass and lawns.
How to find
How
that?
to find that? Who built the English Channel?
Hey, this is easy for Google nowadays.
Okay. Is there a full moon every night in Acapulco?
Search me.
Music suitable for a doll wedding to take place between a Shirley Temple doll and a teddy bear.
Wow, that's very challenging, Eric.
Can the New York Public Library recommend a good forger?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think if you put these questions in Google today, you will find millions of answers to that. But in those days, the poor librarians have to find that out for them. But in the first place,
ridiculous questions, you know.
who built English Channel?
How are we supposed to know?
Is the English Channel built?
Oh. Okay, thank you, Eric, for that funny business moment. Welcome back to the show, guys. You're listening to ASEAN BIZ, your only choice for business updates covering ASEAN countries. I'm your host, Chia, and together with me is Eric Chong, and we bring you business news on everything that happens around the world, which involves ASEAN countries.
The title of our Durian main story today is Property Trends in Malaysia 2016.
Yeah, Eric, the property market in Malaysia has enjoyed robust growth for many years, up until 2014, where the government started to introduce various cooling measures.
And I still can see that in 2015, still people a lot of chasing after properties.
Yeah.
But then across the causeway in Singapore, the government over there has also started to introduce cooling measures to purposely bring
down the property
prices, which they felt have gone way too high.
Yes, the government's duty is to keep control of the economy, and one of the
and make
things
sure
is
that
property
their
prices.
citizens are able to afford the houses that the developer in their country builds.
Right, yes. Property is a big ticket item. It's usually one of the biggest items where people buy in their whole life, right?
Yes, people buy non-stop, and it's actually a political mileage as well, political tools when it comes to property.
Yes,
and also
property is a favorite investment for all the rich people. I understand that almost 100% of rich people either made their money from properties or they park their monies into
properties. And a lot of rich men can't even recall how much of properties they are holding.
Yeah, so you can imagine property prices actually play an important role in the economy, right?
Yes. So as such, developers and investors from Singapore have transferred their bets to Malaysia, especially Kuala Lumpur. Unfortunately, we feel that the grass is not greener over here due to the timing, whereby the Malaysian government is at the same time also trying to bring down property prices over here.
Yeah, thank you to Singaporeans who look us very up and try to invest in property
probably
projects.
they felt that in Malaysia the land are abundant, and it's a good chance for them to catch a bargain over here.
Actually, it's quite natural when you have a slowdown or what in one country. Businessmen and entrepreneurs try to look for opportunities abroad.
Yes, and nowadays you can actually see that Malaysia developers are actually moving overseas. You can see their presence in Laos. You can see their presence in Vietnam, Cambodia.
Yeah. Right. So whether you're a property investor in Malaysia or in other countries in ASEAN, today we are going to share with you some of the property trends or some of the factors that influence property prices in Malaysia for this year in 2016. First of all, we would like to talk about the RPGT. Eric, what is RPGT?
Well, RPGT is short is a real property gain tax.
Yes.
Right. So it was reintroduced back to the market in 2010. Right. Over the past 2 years, there have been a few negative for our property market here.
One of them is the RPGT, right?
Yes. Firstly, the RPGT was reintroduced, as I said, it was on 2010, where former Prime Minister Badawi had removed it. Earlier. It was 0% for 2008 and 2009. Property players were at first in denial, saying that RPGT has minimum effect on the market. They argued that before Badawi's time, RPGT was very high and the property market was okay. Just a year on, everybody lost the argument that RPGT has no effect on the market. It did have a negative impact on investors who are now thinking twice before buying.
Yes, Eric. What is your opinion? Do you think that RPGT has actually an effect on the market or not?
I would say that the RPGT is actually a deterrent factor for speculators.
Right, yes.
And it's actually give those serious house owner benefits to them to actually host the property.
It's good for people who are buying houses for staying or actually investing,
and it's
right?
Not so good for speculators. I would say that this is a very good move to actually put in the RPGT.
Yeah, to reduce or curb the speculation.
Because in today's time, we see that property prices keep on increasing. It's because of the speculator.
So the conclusion is that RPGT actually helped to reduce the property prices in Malaysia, right?
I would say it's actually kept on the movement of properties in a way.
Yeah.
But if you look backwards, a lot of sellers or rather speculators that will charge back the price of RPGT into their sub-sale selling price. So in a way, the sales of the sub-sale is inflated again because they take into consideration they have to pay the RPGT.
Yes, but that will make the prices a bit higher, but the speculators will be deterred or rather they'll think twice. Hey, now the property price is higher already.
Yeah, before they jump into the ship.
Yeah, that seller must have factored in his RBGT that he's supposed to pay to the government and force me to pay it. So I'm not going to buy it now.
So there's always the potential buyer, or rather the potential secondary buyer will always have an option to buy from developer or buy from a sub-sale case. So when they buy from a sub-sale case, the price will inflated because of the RBGT, because the first owner actually factor in to the selling price.
So next we are going to look at DIBS, which is, I believe, a very important factor in making prices of properties go up or down. So previously, property investors had to pay interest to the banks while their properties were under construction. With the DIBS scheme, developers bear the interest to the banks and investors only have to pay their installments upon completion of the project, probably 2 or 3 years later, right?
Yes.
So thereby they save thousands and maybe tens or even hundreds of thousands of ringgit in bank interest, depending on how big a house they bought. But as time went by, however, like they say, there is no free lunch in this world. The Developers Interest Bearing Scheme, or DIBS, inflated property prices, and the market shot up sky high within a short period of just 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, and actually towards the end of removing the DIBS, you can actually see that people are rushing to buy properties at that moment.
Yeah,
it's created a shopping spree.
Yes,
you
to
see
take
people,
advantage.
Yeah, you see people queuing up at a house launching, condo launching. They actually camps there overnight just to sign in.
Right, Eric. You know, I know so many friends who have bought houses and the developers didn't complete on time and they have to pay bank interest. I have a friend who is paying more than 3,000 ringgit every month just to service the interest on a house that he hasn't got.
I believe a lot of folks here actually got caught with the so-called progressive interest should the developer delay their projects. And when they ask back for compensation from the developer, they can't get it, and sometimes it's really put them into a very tight situation that actually goes through lawyers, legal proceedings to actually recover back the money.
So the DIBS is actually very good for the buyer, supposedly.
Supposedly.
But unfortunately, the developers are clever enough to factor back in that cost of servicing the interest back to the customer and probably double or triple that amount.
Yeah. And actually, when you look deeper into any economics, or rather in any market forces, any tools that implemented into the market is actually a two-edged sword. So it can cut both ways.
Right, yes.
Right? So it depends on which side of the sword you are holding.
So eventually, with this sharp increase in property prices, the government had to step in and to remove the DIBS altogether. And it was done in January 2014, or rather end of 2013. So immediately, the property prices started to come down. And if you look over in Singapore, the government there adopted a similar approach to force down property prices, which was quite high also at that time.
And again, property developers and speculators say that the removal of DIBS will have no effect whatsoever on the property market.
You can expect them to say that, right?
So,
you can't blame them,
Andrew,
Eric.
It's actually very strange that developers is always full of good news.
Yeah, no bad news.
No bad news for them.
Never any
just
bad news.
Because they have a lot of unsold units.
Yeah,
right? They all have to pump in good news into the market. And recently comes out from the Star, there's a prominent developer in Malaysia actually made this statement. He says that the property market is on the verge of recovering in Malaysia.
But
so
our
it's high
observation
time for you to buy properties.
Yeah, Eric, our observation shows just the opposite.
Yep.
The number of auction cases are increasing every day.
And you can see that unoccupied units are actually increasing. And just a small example, recently a friend of mine he went for the handover ceremony. He took the key to his new condo, which cost him quite a substantial amount. His monthly payment is 3,000 plus. And when he took me to that particular condo to visit at night, the occupancy is less than 10%. Can you imagine that? So
Well,
you can
that's
actually
quite
see that
normal.
most of the people who buy condos at that moment, or rather, he bought it before the removal of the IBS,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they are rushing to buy properties before the removal of the IBS.
Mm.
And now he holding a property that he can't rent out. He's not going to stay, and every month he's paying 3,000 plus. On
For-
top of that, the management fee is about 400 plus.
Mm-hmm.
So now everybody, I would believe that he is just the tip of the iceberg.
A lot of people like
are
him,
actually
right?
caught in these situations.
Mm.
Right.
So, Eric, there's some potential good news for the developers. We do not know actually it will happen or not. But the latest news is that the Bank Negara, or the Central Bank of Malaysia, is considering bringing back the DIBS in response to begging by developers and also the banks who are doing much less business right now. Okay. But the House Buyers Association, which is on the side of the house buyers, obviously,
Of course.
okay, as well as some other property consultants, viewed that Bank Negara's move to remove the DIBS as something that is very good in order to make houses affordable to people of Malaysia. And according to that association, the House Buyers Association, an affordable house in Malaysia is only around the region of
280,000.
less than 300,000 ringgit. And houses today are still selling way above that affordability level, up to 2 or 3 times that price.
Yes, and in KL, a small condo that's around 800 square feet will actually easily cost you close to 7 to 800,000 per unit.
So you can imagine the scenario right now, Eric, whereby the property developers are going to Bank Negara, please give us back the DIBS, so that it makes it easier for the people to buy houses.
Yes.
We will carry the interest for the period.
Yes.
Whereas the HBA is saying that, please don't bring back the DIBS. Make it affordable.
Yes.
Don't inflate the prices again. So we do not know. Right now, we just had a new Bank Negara governor, right?
Yeah.
And
it
we
just
don't know.
took place. So let's just hope that some new policies will actually comes into the picture to benefit the people. Or rather, most importantly, I would say that our younger generations, they actually found it very difficult to own a house nowadays.
Yes. So, Eric, if we look over to our neighboring country in Singapore, like I said, they have their DIBS there also. And what did they do to their DIBS? Right now, the government is determined to keep the DIBS there in cold storage indefinitely. Because property prices are very high, okay? Yes. So equally high is Malaysia, according to us. I'm sure the developers will scold us. Hey, it's not high.
It's
you
not
know,
high
compared to Shanghai, compared to Hong
so
Kong.
much of facilities. And actually, I actually give credit to a lot of developers. Nowadays, they actually know how to package.
Right. We'll come to that part a little bit later
and,
on how they. So, Eric, let's look at the last factor affecting property prices just before we go for our break.
Yes. The GST and weak Malaysian currency. Right. Malaysia is feeling the effect of introducing GST on the 1st of April 2015. Like many other countries which experienced slowdown during the first few years, and due to low oil prices, Malaysia's oil export has suffered badly. This led to inflation and higher unemployment, which affected the property market also.
Right, yes. And a lot of people were saying that GST had no effect, especially developers. Okay, GST is not only affecting properties, it's affecting all the other goods and services. Right.
Right.
So
and it's actually affected a lot of small business holders. Right. And we spoke about GST in our previous few occasions.
Right.
And just to remind, there are some establishment actually closed down because of GST.
Yes,
right.
Many, Eric.
Many.
And across the board, most businesses on retail and SMEs have recorded drop in sales, year-on-year drop in sales of 30% or more.
Yes.
Of course, there are always exceptions. There are some businesses that are always doing very well, with or without recession or bad economy, right?
Yes. So, well, it just depends on which business are you in, and will you be affected by the economic slowdown, the oil prices, or rather the GST?
Yeah, but generally across the board, Eric, I believe business has slowed down. Even big companies or big manufacturers They have retrenched staff.
And
Even
you can
banks,
actually
right?
see that also a lot of establishment like the entertainment establishments is actually experience a slowdown in business as well.
Okay. And of course, we cannot put the blame only on one factor, say, for example, GST, right?
There are numerous factors.
The main factor probably is the low oil prices around the world, whereby our country is a main good oil producer, and we are badly affected.
Well, okay, let's just wait and see. We will take a short break, and we'll be back shortly.
Stay tuned, guys. Welcome back. You are listening to ASEAN Biz, and our Durian main story today is Property Trends in Malaysia 2016. But before we continue with the concluding part of our story today, Eric will give us a quick health tip. Eric is our health and fitness coach, and he runs the 100-kilometer marathon himself. His health tip story for today is the difference between physical activity and exercise.
Thanks, Andrew. Learn the difference between physical activities and exercise, and how each can contribute to physical fitness. Physical activities is defined as movement that involve contraction of your muscles. Any of the activities we do throughout the days that involve movement, like housework, gardening, walking, climbing stairs, are examples of physical activities. Exercise is a specific form of physical activities, planned, purposeful physical activities performed with the intention of acquiring fitness or other health benefits, says Dr. Bassett Jr., PhD, a professor in the Department of Exercise, Sport and Leisure Study at the University of Tennessee. Working out at a health club, swimming, cycling, running, and sports like golf and tennis are all forms of exercise.
Just hang in there, Eric. Let me just ask you a question.
Okay.
Is lying on a couch watching television an exercise?
It's actually a physical activity. You move your thumbs more.
Thank you. I believe that says it's an exercise.
Right. So to understand more, to understand the difference between physical activities and exercise, we look at most daily physical activities is considered light to moderate in intensity. So moving your thumb is also very light in intensity.
Yeah, my fingers on the mouse,
There are certain health benefits that can only be accomplished with more strenuous physical activities. However, improvement in cardiovascular fitness is one example. Jogging or running provides greater cardiovascular benefits than walking at a leisurely pace, for instance. Additionally, enhanced fitness doesn't just depend on what physical activities you do. It also depends on how vigorous and for how long you continue the activities. That's why it's important to exercise within your target heart rate range when doing cardio, for example, to reach a certain level of intensity. So let's look at what you mean by target heart rate range. Okay, this is very crucial because if you don't overexert it, that's what they cause a sudden death. A lot of people doesn't know their level of heart rates, so they overdo it and they cause sudden death. These are dangerous. Right? Physical activities and exercise, and then you're understanding the intensity. How can you tell if an activity is considered moderate or vigorous in intensity? If you can talk while performing it, it's moderate. If you need to stop to catch your breath after saying just a few words, it's vigorous. Depending on your fitness level, a game of double tennis would probably be moderate in intensity, while a single game would be more vigorous. Likewise, ballroom dancing would be moderate, but aerobic dancing would be considered vigorous. Again, it's not just your choice of activities, it's how much exertions is required. Okay,
Eric,
Andrew, right.
When I'm on my mouse, I can't actually talk, So I would consider that quite a vigorous exercise or activity.
Especially when using your mouse to play games. You keep on chasing your game. That is very high intensity.
And right now they are using 2 fingers or 2 thumbs on the handphone. That popular game, I don't know what's the name. It really wastes all your time, right?
Yes.
But guys are really playing that the whole day.
And they call it high intensity because they're moving their thumb very fast.
And you can be sure they cannot talk because they need to concentrate.
So the definition is quite
Vigorous.
vigorous.
Great.
Well, I mean, it's up to you to actually decipher what this is all about.
Okay.
But a word of caution is that when you do cardio exercise or cardio activities, do keep very close attention to your heart rate and
yes,
how your
it's
heart
very
felt.
dangerous.
It is very dangerous.
Yeah,
And
we always hear of people, Eric, playing games like badminton,
yes,
where they actually run a lot and the heart cannot take it.
yes. So there's
Overexertion, right?
overexertions and a sudden jump in heart rate. So actually, there's not much. Just a word of cautious, but not much danger that you need to avoid. It's just that you need to pay more attention to how your heart felt.
Right, yeah.
So-
Thanks, Eric, for that useful health tip. Let's continue with our Durian main story today, that is property trends in Malaysia 2016.
And before the breaks, we talked about 1, 2, 3 of the factors
Right.
of the property trends. And now the fourth one, we talk about the credit squeeze.
Yes, these are all the factors that actually affect the property market and the prices. But, property developers, they'll always tell you none of this is affecting the market.
Yes, the market is still very robust. And we are on the verge of recovery.
And Eric, we can't blame them, right? They need to sell their properties.
And you can see nowadays the number of unsold units and what sort of parties they throw for launching their products.
Yes.
Recently, I kind of like to attend their launches because certain developers actually give very good food and they give very good buffet spread for their launching. So, well, it's a free lunch anyway.
Fantastic. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So let's come back to our credit squeeze. In 2015, Bank Negara voiced their concern over the growing size of the household debt in the country, which reached a very unhealthy level of 85% of our GDP. That's very high, Eric.
That's very
No?
high.
So the Bank Negara is getting worried that the people are all going bankrupt and unable to service their loans, right?
Yes.
So after that, instructions were given to banks to go easy on lending, not only to the property sector, but across the board, involving car loans, which is quite more difficult to get car loans, right?
Yes.
And of course, credit cards and personal loans.
And I would say getting loans in Malaysia nowadays, you can look at it as very easy, but at times it can be very tough.
Yes. In fact, there's no problem at all. We'll see shortly. Okay. A lot of property owners and property agents complained bitterly that buyers were now not able to get loans for the properties they wish to buy. And again, the property developers and the sellers are in denial. Their argument, which is in a way valid, is that the banks are still giving loans. No problem. It all depends on the borrower, whether he is financially strong enough or not, and also on the location of the property. If it's in a good location, like the one they are selling,
Always a good location.
there should be no problem with getting loans.
Yes, and we even have developers promoting their properties which hiding in somewhere else as good locations. This is actually caused my brain to cover hard. Okay.
Good location is sometimes quite subjective, right?
Subjective. Good location to who? No?
So the fact is that, in general and across the board, banks have adopted a more conservative approach to valuing properties. They feel the market has gone too high too fast, and based on this lower valuation, they are actually giving an even lower margin of loan compared to earlier years. All said, the buyer must fork out a huge chunk of cash to buy his house, not to mention another sizable chunk of cash for renovation and furnishings.
Yes, that's when now the developers comes in. They're giving super bargains from developers. Right. This sounds fantastic. Okay. Some developers that have overextended themselves are feeling the cash crunch and probably having sleepless night over unsold properties or sold properties that have been unbuilt, which means the same thing. Okay, they're booking fees but cannot acquire loans and all these kind of things. You know, the unit are locked in, but they are can't get the loans for 2 months, 3 months.
Adoi.
Okay, they are now running out of options or tricks for selling their properties. Firstly, they are trying very hard to lure the banks back into lending aggressively. Then they are trying to convince Bank Negara to reinstate the DIBS, which they claim had no effect on the market. Finally, as before in previous property slump, they are making their biggest concessions in order to boost sales, giving big discounts seemingly. Okay. Instead of 10% down payment, they will accept just 5% or even less, with the balance of the 10% written off as discount. This should sound great to buyers, but the response had not been good, as buyers still had the above problems to contend with. Besides, the prices are still inflated.
Then comes the other fringe benefits, Eric, like you mentioned. What are those?
Like free S&P fees, free stamp duty, free maintenance fees for the number of months. Sometimes they give 1 year, 2 years. And then free parking lots, and even free kitchens, free aircons, and free flat screen TVs, which are cheaper these days compared to some years back.
Well, I hear a lot of free stuff. Makes it very attractive to the buyer, right?
Yes, and they've done it very nicely in the show houses.
And they have beautiful launching.
Actually attracted a lot of people to buy it. And actually have some developers do a very well packaging. They have good facilities in their condo projects, especially condos. You can see beautiful gym, you can see beautiful swimming pools and facilities. And nowadays the trend is they are having what so-called central kitchen.
Wow.
Right, so it's actually a commercial kitchen dressed up nicely, where you can cook at the kitchen and entertain your guests.
Wonderful.
And,
I'm sure you're impressed.
A lot of people will be impressed. I'm impressed in the first place.
Yeah, actually, Eric, I'm quite impressed with the way that developers are very aggressively trying hard to sell their properties with a never say die attitude.
Yes.
You know?
And actually, these kind of facilities, when you put into dollar and cents, it actually costs quite a lot of money.
Right.
That's why the buyers actually pay the money for these facilities. And I would say some of the house owners hardly use the facilities. Right?
Yeah, Eric, sometimes when you talk about a lot of money, if in real dollar sense is a lot of money, say for example 10,000 ringgit is a lot of money, maybe 20 or $30,000 is a lot of money. But if you compare that as a percentage of the house price, it's actually not so much money.
Negligible.
Probably 2 or 3% or maybe 5% of that price, which they earlier inflated up to 20 or 30%.
30%.
Maybe 50%, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And actually for them to build all those facilities are also quite cheap, because they can actually wrangle out some of these fringes,
bulk orders,
from the bulk order manufacturers and even from the main contractors, because they are giving them big projects.
Yeah, it's a win-win. If the houses cannot sell, then they cannot pay their contractors also, right?
Then they contract the units with the contractors.
Which is worse.
Then the contractors will do their tricks to actually cash out on the units. Okay, we reserve that comment later. Okay,
yeah, I believe, Eric, a lot of our comments need to be censored. Okay. Next, Eric, on the list is the trend of affordable homes, which is always in fashion. You know, Eric, I know you are having a daughter who is going to get married, and definitely you are not alone. A lot of people are getting married, and a lot of people, they have children who are getting married, right?
And they are finding difficulties in getting a house.
Yeah, so what it means is that developers who are building affordable homes, like we defined earlier, 200,000 or 300,000 ringgit, definitely they will have no problem selling those houses.
Yes, and can you imagine the size of those houses when you pay less than 300,000 for it?
Yeah, right now you are going to get a very small house, but because it's affordable, you have no choice. Other houses costing say 500,000 or so, you can't get bank loans in the first place, or even if you can get a bank loan, you'll find difficulty servicing that bank loan, right?
Yes, so in a way, I think these are so-called affordable homes actually give a very good head start for the young people who actually getting married and wanted to have a new house. Then they will spend more time on the outdoors and enjoy the facilities of the condo instead of just stay inside the house. Because those that I come across that cost 300,000 or less is actually the size of about 500 square feet. So can you imagine that?
That would be the size of a flat or an apartment, right?
Well, I believe the flat that I grew up with is actually about 600 square feet.
Even bigger.
Even bigger than today's houses.
But of course, Eric, those days we cannot compare. Nowadays, houses are generally much smaller than those days, right?
Yeah, because the size of the people actually shrunk.
Not really lah. It's the size of the land. You can hardly buy any land in cities like Kuala Lumpur, right?
And I would
as
say
a developer, you can't get land.
Yes, the size of the family also shrunk in a way.
Yes, that's another factor. Those days you
Nowadays-
have half a football team or more than that, you know. Today you have only a singles or tennis player
You
or a
can't even-
badminton player.
You can't even have, I would say most of them are just playing solitaire. You can't even have a chess game or rather a game of Scrabble.
Yeah, that belongs to another discussion, right? Not on
Okay,
property.
we
Why
talk about
people are
that.
having less children nowadays?
We can talk about that in our next story.
Okay, so finally, Eric, before we close off, as usual, we'll talk about predictions
Yes.
pertaining to the property market and the trends in Malaysia for this year. And
But-
as usual, our job is not to make any predictions, and we always advise our listeners not to place their bet on either side of the market. Although at the moment, based on what we have discussed so far, things do not look so good both in Malaysia as well as for the global economy. So our advice is always the same. Be prepared for any eventuality.
Yes. Have lots of cash on standby. Wow, what do you mean by lots of cash, Andrew?
Yes.
If you have
it
bought
means
properties, it means
what I mean is cash on standby is to reserves that can help you sustain for half a year, 6 months or more. Because sometimes the market can get real rough. You know, not only prices can go down, but rental rates also can go down. For example, if you are having houses or shops that you are renting to people and you are getting income from these properties, right?
yes.
You see, sometimes the rental can go down also, so
Yeah.
your income is reduced,
there are times you cannot even find a tenant to your empty units.
right?
No?
And you have to keep paying your maintenance and other charges for your properties also.
Right. And I believe that nowadays a lot of condo owners actually does not have any tenants in their units.
Yeah, that's why when what we mean by lots of cash on standby is to help you tide over some tight or bad times. If you have 6 months or 1 year cash in your bank, you won't be having sleepless nights compared
6
to a
months.
guy, you know, at least for 6 months. And hopefully 6 months the storm is over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we hope that the property market will recover miraculously. I like your word, Andrew. And all of us will have fun times again.
Great, folks. That's all the time we have for today, and we hope you have enjoyed our show. We'll be back with a brand new story from Durian Main Story on ASEAN Biz in the next edition.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.